Thank you for this opportunity. This is actually quite fun. Thank you, Kristen, for framing it as our soul at rest. That was delightful. When Miles and I first started having chickens in Newton, oops, there's one picture. Can you go back about 4, maybe 3? When we first started having, okay. Oh, that's me. We'll figure it out. When we first started having chickens in Newton, much of our chickens were purchased with in mind grain to egg ratio and trying to be efficient and have production chickens. Change has become a part of that in that if we were at this end of the pendulum on that when we first started raising chickens, we are now way at this end with the less efficient layers but the much more rare and interesting breeds. A lot of that is a result of Chris's interest in chickens. We soon realized when he moved in that he quickly learned the calls of all the birds in our yard, and chickens were something that we thought might be a good companion animal for him, and indeed it was. He did not want me to share any of the pictures of him cuddling on the porch swing with the chickens, or laying in the yard underneath the umbrella with the chickens, or curled up in bed. He did have a chick this past week under his neck while he was sleeping. So chickens can become a companion animal. So this is, I'll start introducing our flock, and the pictures are going much faster than I want them to. Can you go back to Anthony, or Anthony, yes, Andy. What was that? Okay, so I'll introduce our current flock. Admittedly, they are much more extensive than they probably should be. This was first named Thing 1 and Thing 2. Once we let them out into our yard, we realized they were very adventurous, so we decided to call them the feminine version of Lewis and Clark. So this is now Louisa and Clara. Next picture. This is our first rescue chicken. We found her wandering along 10th Street by herself and couldn't find anybody who claimed her. So this is Silverstein. Next picture. This is Chocolate and Pillow. They are Araucana chickens who lay green-tinted eggshell eggs, and we brought some eggs so you can see how other eggs look. Next picture. That's Honey. She's also at Americana. Next, this is another rescue chicken. Her name is Abalone, and a neighbor of ours had their chicken coop ransacked by raccoons, and Abalone was the only survivor, and she thought she needed the owner needed a companion coop, or a companion flock, so we acquired Abalone. Next. This group is called Space Jam. They are the most unique chickens we've ever had. These are the breed that Chris has desired for quite a long time, and we couldn't find them. This year we finally found them. They are named Starlight. I guess you can figure out which one that is. Starlight, Nebula, and Aurora, thus Space Jam. They are very flighty birds, and they're very talkative. So if you've heard them this morning, you've been hearing Space Jam. Next, and there you can see a little bit the feathering pattern on Starlight. That was part of Chris's interest in this particular breed. And next picture. These are the silky groups, and silkies have different feather structures than regular chickens. Next picture. I'll go back to the silkies later. This is a buff Brahmin that we were going to bring this morning just to get her off of her nest. Chicks take 21 days to go from egg to chick. This deer hen has been trying to hatch eggs or no eggs for the last 30 days. She is so determined, but she was actually off the nest this morning when we went to try to bring her in to share her with you. Next. That's our latest addition to the family as of last week, and they are here for anyone to see. And next picture. This is one of the silkies. His name is Silver Fox, also known as Puffball. He's just very cute, and the feathers, again, because they're structured differently, they look more like fur rather than feathers. Next picture. This chicken in the back is Persephone, also could be called Persephone. She is a bantam. She is all of our favorite chicken. She's a talker. I think she thinks she's human. You can see the size difference there between Pillow, the regular sized chicken, and Persephone. She is, seriously, she's mythological. She's amazing. Next. So this is how it all got started, from the production chicken to the rare breed chicken. At some point 9 years ago, when we've got a batch of chicks, we let Chris decide what chickens we would have. And he chose 3, 2 which were more egg layers, and this one is a rare breed called a Golden Campen. And his hand is the picture in the very bottom corner, because after we raised it, the company that we bought the chickens from had a photo contest, and we entered Chris in it, and that was one of the pictures that they chose. So he's been pretty integral in this pendulum swing. Why chickens is what I've had to ask myself, and partly I grew up with animals of many kinds, and I think for me what they do is definitely they are a resting place, but they're also a great reminder that the world is much bigger than myself. And the Job passage, if I would put that in my own language, it might be something like, ask the fish, the animals, the birds, and the earth, and they will tell you, dear one, that you are not in charge, that the universe, there's a power in this universe that is in charge, and it's not you. So I think that's the core of what animals remind me of, and in working with them, just the sheer personality is always fun to see. Another reason, or a reminder to me, is a 2nd century theologian, Irenaeus, said, the glory of God is man fully alive. And being that we are an anthropocentric creature, I would, again, my own translation to that is, the glory of God is all things fully alive. And so when I see chickens running around in the yard, flapping, doing dust baths, interacting with each other, I say, yes, these chickens are fully alive. And when I am aware that industrial chickens spend their life in a cage with the footprint of a piece of paper or smaller, I realize I can have a place in helping all things be fully alive. Lastly, a story that I love that says something about chickens to me. At one point, we let our chickens completely free range in our yard while we're out in the garden, and a neighbor was walking their dog off leash, and the dog went, of course, running after the chickens and grabbed one, and I went beeline after the dog trying to get the chicken. The dog, of course, was surprised that it was getting chased by a human, dropped the chicken, and the chicken took off, and then I, of course, talked to the neighbor about, you might want to keep your dog on a leash. And then I got to go find the chicken, and for those of you who know our yard, or don't know our yard, it's an acre of many places where chickens could hide, and so I'm like, okay, where am I ever going to find this chicken? I eventually found the chicken in the absolute opposite corner of the yard, being, from my perspective, guarded by another chicken. So when that chicken took off, another chicken took off with it. And that other chicken was outside the bush keeping that chicken company. So for me, there, again, an opportunity of all things fully alive. May it be so. Oh, and I will say, Chris was a much part of this. And the chickens that we brought, I'm hoping he will come back to show you the chickens that we brought. We brought 9 chickens, all of which are the more rare breeds. We did not bring any full-size chickens this morning, so you'll see small chicks as well as the Space Jam. They're only 20 ounces, so they're quite small compared to the typical 5 to 7 pound, 9 pound chicken.
All right, so I'll start by talking about the Bible verse that I chose and then the winch truck after that. So in Luke 4, Jesus quotes Isaiah to state that he will definitively address the injustices of his time and place. And that event depicted in Luke 4 might not have actually happened. It's very possible that Jesus, along with more than 90% of the first century Jewish population, was illiterate and wouldn't have been able to read from the scroll of Isaiah. So, rather than a 100% accurate historical depiction of Jesus, I see texts such as this one primarily as a depiction of the values of early followers of Jesus. Addressing these injustices mattered enough to them to depict Jesus himself as saying these things. And then these followers went to the great expense of producing copies of and circulating these texts. I also know that addressing similar injustices in our current time and place matter to us at New Creation. I listened to several of you last Sunday discuss this during the worship service. And that's why, at least for those of us who primarily build relationships by engaging with each other's special interests, like me, it's important to talk about at church winch trucks, chickens, comic books, knitting, science fiction, and the other things our brains have latched onto. It's one of the ways we can build enough trust with each other to ask for help, to walk picket lines together, to protest together, and to do the other concrete things we need to do to address injustices. And sometimes the opposite might be true. We might need to first ask for help or protest, etc., in order to create a safe space where we can actually be ourselves and enjoy our special interests, or so that we can afford the time, money, or energy it takes to actually enjoy life together in ways that are authentic. So in other words, I think talking about and engaging with our special interests at church is important. Sometimes it might be a prerequisite for doing the hard things we need to do together, and sometimes it might be one of the end goals of doing these hard things together. So, antique vehicles have been a lifelong special interest for me, and I drove one to church today. It's a 1935 Ford winch truck, and here's some information about it. So the picture on the screen right now is what it looked like when I bought it in 2024. It had been driven for the last time and parked under this lean-to of an old barn around 40 years ago. It was last used commercially in the 1970s in a salvage yard in Newton. The winch and likely the custom-made winch bed as well were installed on the truck in 1940 by a company in Wichita, according to the records I got from the manufacturer of the winch. Although this truck was used as a tow truck towards the end of its original service life, tow trucks were generally smaller and had specialized equipment for towing cars. So rather, trucks like this one were used as small cranes in heavy industries such as oil fields, railroads, and construction. Unfortunately, I don't know any of this truck's history before the 1970s. I can go to the next slide, please. So here's the engine. Flathead V8s are my favorite engine. I really like the way they look and sound. And my winch truck is powered by this Flathead V8, which was rated at 85 horsepower and 100 pound-feet of torque. That's a little less horsepower and a little more torque than a Toyota Corolla or Honda Civic from the early 2000s. The flathead V8 in my winch truck is probably its original engine or maybe a replacement engine that was made in 1936 at the latest, due to some of its key features like the water pumps being on the cylinder heads. You can go to the next truck, or the next picture. So, although the engine isn't very powerful, the truck is able to pull and lift heavy things due to lots of gear reduction in its transmission, differential, and winch. So my winch truck weighed 7,600 pounds when I drove it over the grain bin scales in Mound Ridge, and the red grain truck in that picture probably weighs around 8,000 pounds empty. The farmer who owns that red grain truck broke down close to where I live, and we used my winch truck to pull his grain truck home. Go to the next slide, please. My mom had a flat tire on Highway 15 one day, so I loaded her Honda onto my trailer and pulled it home with the winch truck. Go to the next slide. The winch on my truck is it's rated to safely lift 12,000 pounds or 6 tons, and the new winch line and hook that I installed are rated to safely lift 6,000 pounds or 3 tons. So that means I can safely lift around 2 Toyota Corollas with my winch truck at the same time, theoretically. On the screen is a picture of my winch truck lifting a dead tree, just like picking the whole thing up, pretty much. Yeah. It would be fun to do that at some point if someone has one they'd like to do that with. You can go to the next slide. So I've also used the winch truck for hauling and dumping driveway rock. So we've got this old trailer made from a Chevy pickup bed, and the truck can just pick up the whole trailer and dump it onto the driveway. You can go to the next slide. So here's a picture of the winch truck pulling Dad's little Ferguson TO30 with a snowblower on it. So the Ferguson doesn't have a low enough speed in reverse to really work well with that snowblower. It'll just clog up the snowblower because it's going too fast. So we hooked it up to the winch, and then the winch can just really slowly pull the tractor and snowblower across the yard so it doesn't clog with snow. Next slide, please. So sometimes when I drive my winch truck down a lonely gravel road like this one, it just kind of feels surreal. The whole experience just doesn't seem like it's supposed to exist in the 2020s, and it's a lot of fun. Next slide, please. And finally, for the past 2 Christmases, I've parked my winch truck outside the barn on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and I call it the winch that stole Christmas. So.